Welcome, everyone. This is the second session of our Activity Strong 2021 Summit. My name is Charles Moran, the CEO and co-founder of Link Senior. Before we get started, I just want to cover a few housekeeping items, which is that today you can earn up to 6 NAB, NCAP, NCTRC, and/or NCCDPCU's credits. To earn the credits, you need to attend the full session, and you need to fill in the survey no later than midnight on Friday, June 25th, so that we can process your certificate of attendance and issue up to 6 hours of these credits. Please note that due to the high number of attendees today, certificates will be sent out via email throughout the week of June 28th and no later than Friday, July 2nd by the end of the day. If you have any questions, we actually just improved our systems. There is a new email address you can send all your questions at webinars@linkedsenior.com. As a reminder, this session is being recorded and it is viewable on both Facebook Live and Zoom. But again, to get credit, you need to be logged into Zoom. Another reminder is if you wish to chat with the audience, which has been amazingly active today, as you can probably see, we have over 1,100 people, which is just fantastic. If you want to chat with the audience, you need to select panelists and attendees, right? So just not panelists. And for the ones that are playing our virtual bingo game, the word for this session is directors, all right? So with that, I'm actually very, very excited to introduce you to Karen Love, who's the Executive Director of Dementia Action Alliance. And Karen, I just want to share with you that, you know, sometimes you hear things from other professionals, and that kind of puts a mark on you and your behavior and what you do with your job, but also how you behave as a human being. And I can tell you that several months ago, I heard you say, which I know you say it often, so you probably don't remember, but you said this famous sentence that for me has become kind of a guiding principle with some of the things that we do here at Link Senior, which is nothing about us without us. So I hope, and this is my wish to you, the audience today, that Karen, Lori, and Mike are as inspiring to you as they were to me, and they continue to be. And with that, Karen, I'll invite you to the stage and let you take over today's session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us here today. We are delighted. And yes, the activity professionals have been unbelievable through probably the most challenging, hopefully the most challenging thing that will ever happen in your lifetime. Let's not hope we won't ever experience anything like this again, but bravo to you all. And thank you for being here today. I'm joined by what our organization calls the dementia experts, and those are individuals who are living with dementia. Lori Shear is living with what's called mixed dementia, frontotemporal and Alzheimer's, and Mike Belleville is living with Lewy body dementia. And we often, when we are presenting, have individuals with different forms of dementia because, you know, there's sort of this tendency to think all dementia is Alzheimer's, and it's not. For example, there's over 1 million people who are living with Lewy body dementia. Probably a lot of the Alzheimer's dementias are likely to be mixed. Vascular dementia is a large one. So our nonprofit organization, we're going to be celebrating 25 years next month. So we've been around a long time, but we fill what we hope is an important gap, and that is that we provide hope and help to individuals living with dementia and their families and care partners with information about how to live proactively and the support. We offer all kinds of different programs. Lori and Mike are central to a couple of them. We do 3 weekly online discussions, and 2 monthly podcasts. So without Lori and Mike, those wouldn't happen. They have an awful lot to do. And as Charles said, another sort of foundational element to our organization is we strongly believe nothing about us without us. And that was sort of made famous with the disability activists in the 1990s. And they very successfully changed the face of living with dementia here in the United States. And hopefully we are on a course to do similarly, because there's also this tendency to think everybody has very advanced dementia. And of course, like anything, conditions start with early symptoms. And that is a great segue point um, to our panelists. So, ladies first, Lori, we'll start with you. I wanted to ask what symptoms you experienced that led you to seek a diagnosis.
I'd been vice president at a bank, and yet I think one of the first symptoms we noticed was that I suddenly was having a lot of issues counting money and adding and subtracting. Although I used to do programming and was very good at very long formulas, even using a calculator or Excel, I couldn't remember when to use a plus, when to use a minus, how to divide. That was one of the first, and then from that, we realized that I was starting to get very agitated. I had always been a people person, a motivator. A lot of my career was spent motivating people and doing sales training. And suddenly, just little things people did really agitated me. I was just aggravated. That seemed really odd. And then I started repeating myself frequently. Came to a head one day when I said to my husband, boy, we really need to get these dogs groomed. And he's like, how many times are you going to say that? Well, to me, it was the first time I had said it. And yet I had said it over 8 times within the course of maybe 2 hours. Those things combined, and just my loss of a lot of executive functioning, like writing a check. I had to really think about how I write out the numbers for a check, how I put it in actual writing as opposed to writing the number itself. There's things like that. It started adding up, that I wasn't acting like me. I wasn't the very strong, career-oriented leader person that I had been in the past.
Great, thanks, Lori. Mike, how about you? What symptoms were you experiencing that led you to seek a diagnosis?
Thank you, Karen, for the question, and it's great to be here with everyone. I was a telecommunications technician for a large national telecom company. I was an inside tech, and I was also a lead technician. I was a trainer for new hires. And over a period of time, I was starting to lose my multitasking skills. I was always, like as most people do nowadays, you have 2 screens going on your computer at the same time. And, I'd have 6 or 7 things happening on this one, 6 or 7 things happening on that one. And I could bounce back and forth previously without an issue. But that was becoming harder and harder to do. So at work, it was showing up, with not being able to do tasks as easily as I could before. And the odd thing was, at home, it was showing up differently. At home, it was showing up as personality changes. As Laurie indicated, I wasn't the same person I was before. I was always kind of a laid back person. I was very involved in my community. I was vice chair of the school committee and a couple of other different town committees. And I started pulling away from doing things like that, and my hobbies, fishing and photography. And But, I was getting quicker to anger, very frustrated. And my wife Cheryl had noticed that I just wasn't the same person I was before. So it was just interesting how at work it showed up in one way and at home it showed up in a different form. Um, and it's not, as we indicated how there's so many different dementias. The first thing most people think about when they hear the word Alzheimer's or dementia is forgetfulness. And it's not just about forgetting things or your short-term memory, especially with Lewy body dementia. My short-term memory is nowhere near as bad or challenged as someone who might have Alzheimer's or a different form of dementia. So it's a little bit more difficult and challenging to get a diagnosis in general. As a matter of fact, when I was initially diagnosed, I was actually 52 years old, and they told me I had younger onset Alzheimer's, and it wasn't until a couple of years later they actually changed the diagnosis to Lewy body dementia with Parkinsonism. So it is a very challenging diagnosis to get in general for anyone, not just to hear the words, but to actually get the words and to figure out what do you do next.
Thank you. Well, you segued beautifully into our next topic. And Lori, we'll start with you, ladies first, again. And so was it easy to get diagnosed with a form of dementia?
No. It's probably one of the roughest, hardest times of my life, because something's wrong, and yet you try and tell the doctor you think something's wrong. I was 55 at the time, and the doctor says, "Oh, it's stress." And that was the first thing. Everything was because it was stress. I was like, "No, I don't think so. Nah, this isn't stress. I've been stressed in my life, and this is not what it was like." And then from there, I ended up going through well over 40 hours of testing. Was bounced from one doctor to another. And the fifth doctor I went to, they sent me into Philadelphia, which was like 2 hours away, to a specialist. And he looked at me and then looked at my husband, and he turned to Roy and he said to Roy, "I'm just telling you what the other doctors didn't want to tell you. And as you have FTD and early onset Alzheimer's." Well, I knew what the A word was, but FTD, flowers on the brain, how bad can that be, right? No, it didn't work that way. And I said to him, "Well, what about my career, my work?" And he looked at Roy and he said, "You need to get your affairs in order, spend as much time with her family and friends as you can, and make preparations." And that was it. That was all there was to it. Well, I took care of my mom for a number of years. She was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And at the time, the doctor, first question is, "Well, how long do I have?" And the doctor said, "I'm not God, but I would suspect about 3 months." I thank God she lived 2 years and about 6 months longer. But at the time she was diagnosed, we were given literature. They had a social worker. They had an on-call nurse 24/7. They had a clergyman who followed up with us. All kinds of support groups, all kinds of support. When my husband and I went through infertility and it was determined that we couldn't have our own children, again, the doctor had support groups, literature, alternatives. He had directions for us to go in. When I was diagnosed with dementia, I was given nothing. No support, no encouragement, nothing. Let's go home and die is the message that we received. You're already to the point that something's wrong. And when I found I had put my dirty clothes in the freezer, I really knew something was wrong at that point. That was a key turning point for me. You know something's wrong, and then you start thinking, I'm going insane. I'm just out there, and am I going to turn out to be some suicidal killer or something? Like you can't imagine what's going on. And then for the doctor to just say, go home and die. Just, it was one of the worst days of my life. We went out in the car and we sat in the car and cried, which in Philadelphia, you're paying 20 some bucks an hour for parking. So that was also an expensive little feat. You're told just die. And that's hard. You go home and you go through a period of depression. Of course you're depressed because you're listening to what the doctor says. The doctor's always right? And he said, go home and make preparations. So I went home and I started cleaning out closets and giving away my jewelry. That was a bad mistake. And other things, preparing to die. It's sad that we look at people with dementia with only one set of eyes. We look at them with a set of eyes that say they're dying of dementia. I've since learned that I want to live with dementia. I'm not just a person dying of dementia. I'm a person living with dementia. And I think I went past your question, so I'll be quiet now.
No, actually, let me just ask one more kind of sub-question, and that was that the doctor directed his words to Roy, your husband. I know you talked to people all over the country living with dementia. Was that unusual?
No, it's not. We've got quite a stigma about dementia in this country, and in my opinion, it starts with the doctor. It starts with your doctors, because if your doctors are going to treat you in such a way when you're in the office that they don't even give you the diagnosis, they give your spouse the diagnosis, how do you expect the rest of the world to treat you? If the doctor is going to treat you as someone dying, as someone who can't understand that I'm giving you this diagnosis, of course, the rest of the world is going to have that same opinion. And that's very sad. And yes, I talk to people all over the world, and it's very, very common that that's exactly what happens. You're an invisible person. You're not there. And sometimes people will go up to Roy and I'll be standing right next to him. And they'll go, how's she doing? Come on. But that's something that is frequent among all of us. We face that a lot.
Thank you. Mike, how about you? How was your diagnostic experience? Was it better than Lori's?
I'm sorry I'm chuckling, but no, obviously not. Although you wouldn't know that. So I apologize for saying obviously, but it took a long time. It took a couple of years, if not longer. I mean, the symptoms started in my late 40s. So we were seeing a doctor already, a neurologist, as a matter of fact. And, as Laurie said, the most common thing that, most doctors will tell you is it's stress. And, or it's actually more than that, it's depression. So you go through that whole round of going to see a psychiatrist and a psychologist and getting on medication. And, you find out 6 months later, things aren't getting any better, they're getting worse. So you go through the next round of, basically throwing mud on the wall and seeing what sticks to see what could possibly be wrong. And I don't fault doctors for that, because they don't even have all the right tools themselves to diagnose a person with dementia. There is no blood test right now. There's no scan that will definitively tell a doctor, that you have for sure dementia. And so it is, challenging for them on their side as well. But the delivery method could definitely be changed. So, initially, like I said, we were told it was depression, and we were told it was Lyme disease. Then we were told it was, I don't know, it was just a laundry list of different things, until, most people have what's called an aha moment. And for my wife, Cheryl, and I, that aha moment came from what I call challenging conversations. So we had a disagreement one evening, and I woke up the next morning getting a cold shoulder from Cheryl, and probably justifiably so, but not understanding why, and which irritated her even more. So, that wasn't a good thing. But, once she saw that I was sincere, and, she started telling me about, the talk we had and some of the things I said, things I would never dream of saying, and especially, talking to her in that way, we knew that there was something more going on. So we went back to the doctor again and spoke to him. And that's when he really started looking at, what could be causing the issue. So you go through MRIs, PET scans, SPECT scans, spinal taps, neuropsychological exams. And again, this all takes time. But everything started coming back, probable Alzheimer's, probable Alzheimer's, probable Alzheimer's, until he finally put all the pieces together and said, well, it looks like you have younger onset Alzheimer's. I'm going to start you on this medication. I'll see you in 6 months. And he walked out the door. And that was it. And I mean, he genuinely nice guy. I mean, I don't dislike him or hate him or anything like that. But, again, you just kind of feel like you got hit in the head with a baseball bat. So I was already depressed, and, I went into a deeper depression for about 5 or 6 months until Cheryl said, enough is enough. And, I jokingly tell people she said it a little differently, but we'll just keep it at that. And just kind of kicked me in the pants and said, we're gonna do what we need to do. And she started playing Dr. Google herself to find out where she could get support. And luckily, she found our local Alzheimer's Association chapter in Massachusetts. I went to my first support group meeting, after a consultation. I went to their educational programs and some pilot programs that they started. But it was at that support group meeting that really turned it around for me. I learned that I wasn't alone. I learned that I wasn't going crazy. And I learned that I still have a life to live. I became an advocate. I've been advocating ever since. And that next month will make 8 years, since my diagnosis. So, again, doctors, I honestly believe that, they're so trained to fix what's wrong with you. And for some of them, when they can't do that, they don't know what to do. So they tell you, see you in 6 months and walk out the door. When what they should be telling you is you can still live a meaningful, purposeful life. No one knows how long this progression is going to take. Initially we were told, the doctor told Cheryl, not me, that I'd be in a nursing home in 3 to 5 years. Like I said, it's, 8 years. So, on that doctor, but it just goes to prove that, again, they don't know themselves. And, no one knows how long the progression is going to take from point A to point B. So, what are you going to do with your life? Fortunately, for folks like Lori and myself, we found the AA. And, I have a favorite quote from one of my favorite movies, Shawshank Redemption. It's get busy living or get busy dying. And, I've chosen to get busy living. And DEA helps me a lot, do that a lot.
And I can tell you, both of them are super busy living and doing all kinds of exciting things. Well, I noticed one of the items in the chat was that they recognized you both have very supportive spouses. And that's true. They do. I mean, that is a gift. And those spouses don't just take over and assume that, Lori or Mike can't do things. Is they figure out it's truly a partnership. And that's so important for Lori and Mike. So Lori, rewind and go back. What do you wish the doctor had said and done when you were given the diagnosis?
Well, I went through 5 doctors before one of them was actually upfront with me and told me what was happening. And that's really sad that you have to go through 5 doctors before they tell you really what's happening. I wish a doctor had given me a list of support groups. I tried the Department of Aging, but I was 55, so they didn't want anything to do with me. They said I was too young. I tried the Alzheimer's Association. Well, we lived in the country, and although Mike had a great experience, I didn't. They didn't want, all their support groups were, the person living with dementia goes one way, the care partner goes the other, and the closest one was over an hour away. Well, my husband and I are a partnership. We're a team. And if we're going to get support, we're going to do it together. So the Alzheimer's Association didn't work for me where I lived. Then at one point when I went to a new neurologist, I handed her a list of so many support groups, books, chats, etc., Facebook groups that were so powerfully helpful to me, starting with Dementia Action Alliance. And she handed it back to me and she said, no, we send them to the Alzheimer's Association. And I said, do you realize they're not active in this part of our country? There was no alternative and nothing. It was really sad. Going back to when I was diagnosed, what I wish the doctor had done is treated me with the same compassion and humanity as they treated my mom when she was diagnosed. I wish the doctor had said the same thing that her doctor said. Do as much as your body tells you you can. And when you're tired, stop. Let your body guide you. I wish the doctor had said, focus on your abilities and not your inabilities. That's how we live our lives, is we focus on what I can still do. Because, it's really sad when I think about the things I can't do anymore. So why would I do that? I can't count money anymore. That's okay. I've got a Visa card. It works great, even if it's a $2 purchase. That's all I need. It's compassion, understanding. I wish a doctor had said, get involved with other people living with dementia, because I've learned more from other people living with dementia, like Mike and the other 100 or so friends that I have living with dementia, than I have any doctor. I wish the doctor had said, go home and live. Go home and live with dementia instead of you're dying of dementia. There's such a difference in that. Instead, I went home and I fell into depression. I fell into literally getting ready to die. And at one point I had to kick myself in the back end and say, hey, you've been a motivator most of your career. This is not you. Knock it off. And I had to start living. For me, I had to start living. In doing so, my motto is, I don't want just to survive. I want to thrive. Dementia Action Alliance has helped me with that, because sometimes they keep me so busy, I don't know which way I'm turning. I don't have time to think about dying. It's too much to do. As long as I have a breath, as long as I can talk, my intention is to tell people what it's like living with dementia and try and educate doctors. Stop with the doom and gloom. Give us some encouragement. And to tell people that have been diagnosed, you want to live the best of every single day that you can. Live positive, live proactively. Yeah, you're going to run into things that you do that, you think, boy, that was really dumb, like putting your dirty clothes in the freezer, maybe. Things along that line. You are going to do things that you think, wow, I can't believe I did that. You're going to forget conversations. You're going to forget people. But man, you can have so much life. You can have so much living. Right now, I mentor 3 people right now, which means I spend an hour every week with each one of those people separately. Why is that important? Because the first thing I say is, you need to remember how to live. You need to remember how to smile, how to laugh, how to have joy in your life. I run a weekly dementia discussion group. We average about 20 people per week that just come to learn from each other. And I've learned more from those people living with dementia than I can tell you, because sometimes they've experienced something that I haven't experienced yet. And so when it happens to me, I'm ready. I'm ready. We live by strategies. We learn how to overcome obstacles, either go over them, around them, tunnel under them, whatever we have to do, but we focus on overcoming the obstacles that are causing challenges to me. No matter how large or small that obstacle is, there are ways to make it easier. And we do that so that helps me to be more independent. If Roy did everything for me, like when I forgot how to make a bed, if Roy had made that bed for me, 4 years later, I wouldn't be making beds anymore. Roy would be making the beds. But instead, we figured out why I couldn't make the bed. What was the obstacle that prevented me from doing that? And you know what it was? Solid sheets. A solid sheet made no sense to me. We had to go with striped sheets because I can follow stripes and figure out how they go in the bed. I couldn't follow a solid sheet. I didn't know top from bottom. If you really take a look at what's causing me to go downhill, what's causing me to get agitated, what's causing me not to remember how to do things, not all the time, but many times, you can come up with a way to fix that and change it. And that's just really important in life, to figure it out and not do it for the person. I don't want Roy doing things for me because then he disables me. Instead, we work together so he can enable me to live more independently.
Well, Mike's wife, Cheryl, is another huge one who's strength-based. And when early on, when I met them a number of years ago, and we were just sitting around talking, Cheryl said, I know my husband really well, and he was just having trouble remembering in the morning and the night to take his meds, despite I'm putting them out, reminding him. It just became, this thing. She goes, so, not that he drinks that much or any of that, but I decided one night to put his meds in a shot glass. And he no longer forgets to take those meds. So Mike, yes, you and Cheryl are another strong partnership in strength faith. What would you both have wished the doctor had said and done when you were diagnosed?
I don't know that there's much left to say, to be honest. I guess the one thing I would encourage doctors the most is I believe that the number one prescription they should be giving a person with a dementia diagnosis is social engagement. It's not a pill. Not that we don't want our medication or take our medication. It's very important. But I honestly, truly believe what's helped me the most, and nobody can talk me out of the fact that I believe that the reason the progression of the disease is as slow as it's been is because I've been able to stay socially engaged in a lot of ways. obviously in person is the best. You can't replace that. I've learned, I wish they would tell folks that just because you have a diagnosis doesn't mean you stop learning. Doesn't mean you can't, you stop doing things you used to be able to enjoy doing before. Since my diagnosis, I've learned that I love to cook. So I cook dinner every night, and trust me when I tell you, Cheryl loves that I've taken over that task. Although we do it together. There've been a few incidents on the stove, and I won't go into great detail, but but it's great that it's something that we can do together. I make the entree while she does the side dishes, and helps me manage, what, all the ingredient list. And, I've learned some strategies along the way, so that I'm not always, duplicating, putting in the same ingredient 2 or 3 times, or the wrong ingredient for that matter. But I've also learned that I love to draw, paint.
Hey, Mike, can I share the
Yeah.
screen for just a second and show one of your watercolors?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
All right, I know I'm kind of springing this on you, so I wanted to
Yeah, you are. I wasn't aware this was going to happen, but
question first, but this whole bit about learning new things, you never watercolored before getting diagnosed, right?
no, I did not. I did not. It's something that I truly enjoy doing. I feel like it's like, doing art, for me is a form of social engagement, because it's not just an activity. Don't just sit somebody down with a coloring book and say color in the lines. Um, it's if it is a form of engagement and social engagement, because it allows me to. I feel like I'm giving a part of myself to someone when I do a painting or a drawing for them. Um, and I I'm still okay with technology. I'm actually going to be starting, because we've moved. This will be our third, well, twice we've moved since my initial diagnosis. But the first thing I did when I retired from work, when I was 54, um, was I walked into my local senior center and I asked them who they had helping folks with their technology, issues, and they didn't have anyone. So I volunteered. We started a group. They call us Mike's Google Gals, and we'd meet every Thursday, sitting around a table. I could help one person at a time, but it was amazing helping one person, how it would, other people would go, oh yeah, I've had that same challenge or issue. And we moved to a new town, so I started the same program there. We just moved again, and starting in September, I'll be starting the same program in this town. So again, it's a way of engaging. It's a way of keeping my brain working. But more importantly, it's something that's meaningful to me. I said earlier, don't just sit somebody down with a coloring book and crayons. I mean, engagement can take many forms, but it has to be meaningful to the person, that's, that's doing it. And yeah, I could go on and on just on that topic alone, but I'm sure I'm way off what the initial question was. So
Nope, you're spot
okay.
on. While you're talking, maybe can we segue? You have Lewy body dementia, and
Mhm.
those symptoms are different than,
Yeah,
for example, Alzheimer's or vascular. Could you talk a little bit about your symptoms?
sure. Um, some of the hallmarks of Lewy body, and if for folks who really want to know how challenging it is, there's a great documentary out called Robin's Wish, and it's about the struggles that Robin Williams had in not getting a diagnosis. Um, and they didn't find out till autopsy that, that's what he had. Um, but some of the challenging issues with Lewy body are sleep. I have what's called REM behavior sleep disorder, where normal person that goes to sleep, when you hit that REM state, your body, your brain actually sends a signal to your body that pretty much paralyzes you, so you don't move, but you're in that deep, deep sleep. You're having those vivid, vivid dreams. I don't get that signal all the time or most of the time. So, and unfortunately, the types of dreams are always confrontational, so I could be in a fight or chasing someone or defending someone or fight, whatever it is. So I act out my dreams. Punch, kick, scream. I knocked over the nightstand, walked into a wall. Poor Cheryl's got bruises, and there's times where I say, "How'd you get that bruise on your leg?" And she'll just smile, and then I go, "Oh, okay." But so that's one hallmark of Lewy body. I have hallucinations, which most people will say, well, anybody, with Alzheimer's and dementia has hallucinations, but that usually happens in a later progression of the disease. People with Lewy body have them early on, and they affect all your senses. They're not just visual, it's smell, hearing, touch, everything. The other thing that's very challenging is moods. I feel like I'm a yo-yo, pretty much from day to day. I deal with a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, a lot of delusions. And the way I try to explain it best to folks is, Cheryl had come home from work one day because she still works a full-time job. And she told me, she said, I never know what to expect when I open the door. And, I thought about that, and it made me realize that I feel like I'm all the characters of Winnie the Pooh, because there's some days where I feel like I'm Eeyore, where I'm very bother, and other days where I'm Piglet and I'm just, all over the house, or Tigger, where I'm ready to pounce on somebody. But, hopefully, I do strive to try to be the lovable, huggable Winnie the Pooh as best I can. But that's unfortunately very typical for people with Lewy body, and having the Parkinson symptoms. I don't have full-blown Parkinson's, but I have what they call Parkinsonian. So I have the tremors, the mobility issues, things to deal with that as well. But again, I hope what we don't do, and I know Lori doesn't, is we don't focus on the challenging things that we have to deal with all the time. We want to focus on what we still can do. We want to focus on how we can still help people. We want to make it better for the people coming behind us, so that they don't have to deal with it, hopefully as challenged as we have. And yeah, I think that's about all.
Well, just judging from the chat responses, you and Lori are inspiring so many of the participants today. Now you know why we called them the experts. I'm a gerontologist and I've worked in this field now for 4 decades, but I learn from them every day. It's a blessing. Lori, you have, excuse me, mixed dementia. Could you talk a little bit about your symptoms?
Agitation, anger. I can get agitated very quickly, so I have 2 fixes. One is my towel, which if I'm on Zoom and I'm getting frustrated with something somebody's saying or just whatever, I have my little towel and just wringing it kind of helps. If I'm really kind of frustrated with my husband or at home, I have poor Charlie. And Charlie unfortunately takes the brunt because he was my mother's, and I can punch him, I can beat him, I can throw him, and he just bounces right back. So agitation and anger is pretty strong with FTD. I have balance issues. In particular, if I'm in a crowd, I can't filter people. It's like snow coming at me when people are walking towards me. One time I actually fell backwards onto the concrete. So when I'm with crowds, I need to keep a walker. And sometimes at home, I need my walker as well. I've lost my ability to filter sound. So my earplugs go with me everywhere. don't leave home without them. I have many earplugs in many different formats. And the reason is if I go to, say, Walmart, I hear the conversations on both sides of the aisle that I'm in. If I go to a restaurant, the clanging of forks on the dishes, a server stacking dishes is so loud to me, I can't concentrate on the conversation I'm trying to have with whoever I'm with. Confusion. We recently moved from Pennsylvania to Alabama. And one day I decided I wanted to go see my neighbor. Well, the neighbor I wanted to see is my friend in Pennsylvania. She and I spent a lot of time together. So when my husband was watching TV, I took off and at night and went looking for my friend in Pennsylvania. I didn't find her. Sometime later, my brother called and Roy came looking for me and couldn't find me, got in the car, drove up and down the street. He finally found me. I was laying in the neighbor's yard with their 2 dogs, someone who I really didn't know very well. They know me now, but they didn't know me then. They were kind of shocked when they came out of their house and found somebody laying in their yard. But anyway, I can become very confused. And yet there's other times that, I focus on now. I thank God I'm having a great day today. And I count my blessings. I think one of the difficult parts to handle is when you walk into a room. And one day I walked in and I started screaming at Roy, why did someone put my furniture in this house? Why did somebody steal my furniture? Because it wasn't my house at that point. It didn't look like my house. So we do a lot of things where Roy takes me around to every room and we talk about every room. We try and make up stories about every room. And that helps me to visualize each room. So I start making it my own. Even the spare bathroom that nobody uses, we walk in there so that I get used to that being part of my home. Another thing he does is at night, when it's first starting to get dark, he goes into every room and turns lights on. Because otherwise I walk into a room and in Oli, our light switch was on this side of the wall and here it's on that side of the wall. And I can't figure out why I can't turn on lights. So every night he goes around and turns on the lights. And that's really great. I saw someone make a comment about sewing. I just want to say, I used to sew a lot. I used to love to sew. And then suddenly I couldn't follow a pattern at all. I couldn't sew. And I wanted to make something for all of my great nieces and nephews to remember me by. What I found was I can't follow a pattern, but I can still sew straight lines. So I made so many quilts of straight lines. I made one for each of my great nieces and nephews, and I have a lot. I think I'm up to 18 of them now. I made blankets, fuzzy blankets, and embroidered their names on them. Roy bought me a new sewing machine and put a note saying, I want you to create as long as you can. Which was so touching to me because it was another way of him saying, we're not going to give up. We're going to keep going. So many things in life, it's easy to just say, I can't do this. I can't. But if you have the proper support and the proper encouragement, then hopefully it'll change to, let's figure out how you can do this. You can't follow a pattern, but can you still sew straight lines? I think that's such an important part of the dementia journey, whether it's, I can't go to the mall because I can't stand crowds. Well, yes, you can. Let's get a walker. Let's get earplugs and sunglasses. When I go to the mall, it's earplugs and sunglasses because I can't handle the overstimulation. That's part of the FTD. It's finding how to do things, how to keep myself more independent and living. And living, I like to live. I really enjoy living. I tend to be a little bit of a daredevil, maybe. Since my dementia, I went skydiving. That was pretty awesome, jumping out of a plane. I parasailed off a Table Mountain in South Africa. I went ziplining in Alaska, ATVing in Wyoming, cavern kayaking in Wisconsin. We've traveled to 32 states in our motorhome and intend to do more. I've gone scuba diving in Bonaire and quite a few other places since my dementia. I'm not ready to die. I'm not ready to give up. I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to keep fighting for as long as I can. I'm ready to thrive.
Well, this is very powerful. I never, ever tire of hearing from both of you. But I want to open it up to questions. There is a Q&A mechanism on the Zoom. Does anyone want to give us questions? And maybe while we're waiting, there's nothing queued up yet. Is there anything, Mike, Lori, that maybe you haven't said that you think is really important for people to know about living with dementia?
I think for me, it would be, we still want to be treated as the person we were before. We want to be talked to, not talked at, like anyone else, it's challenging. I can understand, for folks to look at us as if we're not the same, but we still are. And I don't think that ever goes away at all through your entire journey with this, with a dementia diagnosis. We may not be able to communicate at certain times. We may not be able to, as the progression goes on, we may not be able to communicate at all, but we're still us inside. And we want to be treated with the same dignity and respect as anyone else. Again, I think the biggest thing is, for folks to realize that dementia is more than memory loss. It affects a lot, affects everything, your personality, who you are, so I don't know, I guess I'm having a hard time, coming up with the right words, but yeah, just, try not to focus on the things we can't do anymore, and don't ever think that we can't learn anything new. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time with words right now, but yeah. You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Thank you. A lot of questions are coming in. We may not have time to answer them all online, but if Link Seniors will permit us, we'll be happy to answer them. There's one here that I thought would be good. I have a question that it's difficult to ask, but how do you emotionally, mentally prepare for a day when possibly you will not remember who you are? And how will you still communicate the things that you're saying now are so important to you?
I know some sign language. I have a brother and sister-in-law that are deaf. One of the things that Roy and I did right after I was diagnosed was I taught him 20 words in sign language, just 20. Pain, confused, thirsty, hungry. And we practice those every month. I did videos on them. I think that it's difficult because, Mike and I know that day is probably going to come. We know just by what we've seen in a number of our friends, we know the day is going to come when we're going to go downhill. And we've seen friends that have been just like us and then all of a sudden took a nosedive the next day. But again, yeah, I want to make preparations, but I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on the today. Have we made preparations? Sure. We got our affairs in order. That's one thing we listened to that the doctor said. That was the only thing. And we do other things such as learning some sign language. And I think that's really important. That's important to have. Somebody asked about, do we tell restaurants? I don't know if you can see this. I have a business card that I hand to everybody. Servers in a restaurant, airlines, stewardess, whatever. And it says, please be patient. I have dementia. I may repeat questions, forget what you've told me, take longer to make decisions. This has helped me so many times because hopefully it's going to help some of the people to have some understanding of what I'm going through. And help them to realize, don't go and mouth off 15 specials that you have. One is good. Other than that, I don't make decisions very good. One special is probably what I'm going to go with.
And I see Charles is on, so we're probably at our time. Is that right?
We are, Karen, but I definitely wanted to take you on your invitation to answer some of these questions. We've had many, as you can see. So on the screen right now, I'm sharing Karen's email. And Karen, I'm sure that you'll be very appreciative if people just reached out to you if you had any questions.
Absolutely.
You know, I do want to pause here, and Lori and Mike, and indirectly both of your spouses as well. In the name of the audience, we just want to thank you for what you do in advocating and just simply being a voice for people living with dementia. I think that the best comment, well, one of the best comments that came in today was from somebody called Julie, who said, you have impacted my life forever. Right? I think these are meaningful words, and they do matter a lot. So thank you for the work that you do. And Karen, I know it's the third time that you come to one of our webinars. I can tell you that we learn every single time. And simply, I just want to thank you for leading your efforts with the Dementia Action Alliance and leading and helping us hear, but also understand the voices of people living with dementia. So with that, I want to thank you, Lori. I want to thank you, Karen, and thank you, Mike. We'll be in touch. And if there's anything else we can do in the future, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you for having us today, and thank you, audience, for everything that you do.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mike. See you.
Bye-bye.
All right.